work to do. Good afternoon. Welcome to Newsline. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lachlan Williams.
And I'm Isabella Stachkovsky. Coming up in the bulletin, fears of youth gang recruitments as Melbourne's crime rate rises, and a special live interview with Dr. Peter Goss. But first to local news with Zara McDonald. Thanks, Zara.
The Victorian Education Department is facing million-dollar lawsuits over claims a pedophile teacher was shuffled around from school to school. Robert Leonard Morris, now 71, worked as a primary school teacher between 1966 and 1980 in Victoria. He was jailed in March for the abuse of 6 boys. 10 of his former students have launched legal action, arguing the department knew of the abuse but failed to act. Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews this morning announced the leasing of the Port of Melbourne for $9.7 billion, after initially expecting between $5 to $6 billion. Mr Andrews said the lease is a vote of confidence for the strongest economy in the country, saying it's just another way the Victorian government has fulfilled their election promises. And Victorian farmers are bracing for heavy rain over the coming days, with Victoria's flood threat far from over. Farmers across the state anxiously wait to see the extent of crop damage from last week's floods. Forecasters predict more rain will come over Tuesday and Wednesday, with parts of the Great Ocean Road still at risk of landslides.
Thank you, Zara. With Melbourne's crime rates on the rise, young people facing social exclusion are at risk of being recruited by gangs. Madeline Jekyll reports.
Ashraf Manasseh fled Egypt's violent streets to seek asylum in Australia 5 years ago. He never thought he'd feel unsafe in his own Melbourne home. Ashraf and his wife's Bundura apartment was raided in June this year. The thugs stole $30,000 worth of precious possessions, including birth certificates and passports, before returning only days later to drive off with their car.
I didn't believe that this could happen in Australia. This never happened to me in Egypt, even with the corruption in the country and even with the crime.
Crime rate has soared 12.4% across the state. Car thefts are up 22%, while house burglaries are up an alarming 14%.
For a few days I thought it's not safe, this country, I have to leave.
Police allege Melbourne's escalating youth gangs have a part to play. A recent spate of arrests found that the Apex gang are recruiting those as young as 12. Professor of Criminology Rob White says young people facing social exclusion are more vulnerable to gangs' lure.
Well, I don't think the key issue is gangs at all. The issues are standard criminological issues of marginalisation, but in the end, the core issue has to deal with the social conditions within which these young people are growing up.
The Helping Hand project is working with some of those most at risk of social exclusion, young migrants. They provide supportive mentoring for 13 to 21-year-olds while settling into Australian culture. The project believes community support for these young people is crucial to helping them adjust to their new lives.
So with all these sort of challenges on top of what they've dealt with in the past and not knowing their way around and often not having the sort of supports and connections that people need to be able to get on with things in their lives.
Projects like Helping Hand are a step forward towards creating an inclusive environment for Melbourne's young people.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing for everyone, and it's a good thing for younger refugees.
Madeline Jekyll, Newsline.
A spike in the number of subdivided properties has seen a group of moorland families up in arms. Alex Mitchell reports.
It's a sight that the people of Moreland have seen enough of. A house knocked down to be replaced by 4 new 2-storey units. The neighbourhood's residents have a string of concerns, including their sunlight being blocked, too much traffic and general overpopulation. A group of 10 local families have let the Moreland Council know how they feel, led by Nancy Mariani.
It's disappointing. What used to be the dream of a one-storey dwelling or one house on a dwelling is now no longer existent.
Mrs Mariani says the neighbourhood is sick of the noise of construction works and thinks the new houses invade on her family's way of life.
There'll be overshadowing as a result of double-storey housing and overlooking. If they don't actually put in glazed windows up top, which was one of the recommendations by council, they can look into our property and infringes on our privacy.
With hundreds of subdivisions approved by the Moreland Council this month alone, it's unlikely this surge will be slowing down anytime soon.
Population growth needing cities to evolve has seen tens of thousands of subdivisions approved statewide so far this year. But Moreland City Councillor Sue Bolton says there's little her council can do.
You know, the reality is local councils' hands are pretty much tied.
Councillor Bolton blames developers for much of the neighbourhood's frustration.
The developers' own actions, the sort of proposals they're coming up with, the unpreparedness of developers to make any changes in their plans to accommodate neighbours.
Developers must take the blame for poor accommodation, agrees local real estate agent Jude Catton.
There's some developers that just develop it for pure profit. The quality's not there, the facade isn't there.
Nancy Mariani should get used to her neighbourhood resembling a construction yard.
I just think it's congested living like sardines in a tin.
Alex Mitchell, Newsline.
We know energy efficient houses are great for the environment, but low carbon homes are also helping those most in need. Aidan Ratcliffe has the story.
Saving energy has always been a good way to save money, and especially for the financially vulnerable, every cent counts. New research by RMIT urban design experts has found living in low carbon homes could also boost your health.
They felt happier, they felt healthier, they didn't have to go to the doctors as much.
The study looked at Horsham public housing tenants living in efficiently designed homes.
We found that the households were about $1,000 better off a year compared to the control households.
Known as catalyst homes, they don't come cheap. But lead researcher Dr. Travis Moore says the benefits run deeper.
So the challenge with your kind of traditional cost-benefit analysis approach is that it struggles to factor in, I guess, a lot of the broader impacts of more sustainable housing.
Here at Ceres Environment Park, the emphasis is on educating the next generation in the importance of sustainable living. They say carbon neutral housing has benefits which aren't all to do with money.
The way we look at it is really about taking a bit of responsibility for our resource consumption, trying to minimise that while maintaining our lifestyle and allowing that to free up resources and funds for other projects.
The park's energy education coordinator, Ian Culvard, says teaching people to live sustainably is also important.
You can build a 5-star building, but if you've got people with 1-star behaviour, it's not going to make a lot of difference.
And there's plenty to learn. Aidan Ratcliffe, Newsline.
The current trial ban on amplified busking has taken many by surprise. It comes after the council has received over 250 noise-related complaints. The ban will remain in place until the end of October. Uma Rishi reports.
When walking down the streets of Melbourne, it's hard to miss the thriving busking community. The City of Melbourne's 3-month ban on amplified busking along Swanston Street has come as a shock to many street performers. Lucky Moore is a full-time busker on Burke Street and has been performing in Melbourne's CBD for 5 years. He says Swanston Street is an ideal place for busking.
The council didn't think it through. I think that the amount of buskers is the same, the amount of buskers with amplifiers is the same, and they're just finding new spots, perhaps spots closer to residential areas or less convenient spots to busk in town, whereas Swanston Street, being quite a wide road with low residential property, would have been a better option.
PhD candidate and music tutor at RMIT University, Sam Whiting, says it will be hard for buskers to play without amplification due to the environmental noise on the bustling street.
Acoustic instruments aren't going to cut it, and I think amplified instruments on Swanston Street work really well because it's a noisy place, you want to attract people. I understand that there's problems with amenity in terms of like businesses, you've got sound leaking into nearby businesses and things like that, but I think the advantages and benefits of having buskers around outweigh the negative sides.
I mean, you know, cities aren't exactly an exciting, vibrant place by themselves. It takes art and it takes music.
Lord Mayor Robert Doyle says while busking adds colour and creativity to Melbourne's atmosphere, it needs to be balanced with protecting the amenity of people who live and work in the city.
Uma Rishi, Newsline.
We'll be back after this short break. You're watching Newsline. Bizarre. Bizarre.
Bizarre.
Bizarre.
Bizarre. Bizarre. Bizarre.
Why would you use that word?
Like you say in the same, the two forms of bizarre.
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 Why would you use that word though? Like it's such a.
I always use it.
Like I say, like it's
so bizarre.
like it's unusual.
Yeah.
Not like this
Like
this is a bizarre.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh shit.
My idea of being manly is manning up and owning up to your own and sharing them, talking about them.
It's like, nah, man up, actually talk about it. That's being a man, that's being brave, taking it on.
People like to confuse them with being strong all the time, which isn't necessarily true, you know?
Like, men shouldn't be afraid to talk about their feelings. Even if they do cry, it's natural. Like, if they weren't meant to cry, they wouldn't have tear ducts.
I think it is society and these stereotypes that are from the 1950s that we are still sticking to.
You've said it 100 times. You'll get bizarre too. Yes. I wonder what the ad is.
Huh?
I wonder what the ad is.
It's all local stuff usually. Like
Yeah, they're really
come
fun.
to Joe's car yard.
Yeah, like just 15 minutes out of Melbourne. And it's like, no, it's not. It's like an hour and a half. Hey?
Where is?
On the ads
the
on this
ads,
channel,
yeah.
they're all like a local couple. And they're like, yeah, come to Nancy and Ted's farm.
Like
He's
Mr. Plough from The Simpsons.
Yeah, it's like that.
30 seconds.
On at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And we'll
Fair
be
enough.
back into the break, which is about 17 seconds.
Mr. Plough.
Is it 17 seconds? No, it's 10 seconds.
Mr. Plough.
Please count me out of the break at this time as well, please.
I'm a bit concerned that we were still talking when they cut to us at the
I
start
think
of
they
the show.
were, but I don't think it matters.
I can hear them.
That happens when I watch like a news brekkie.
5, 4, 3,
If you put it in your
2, 1.
Welcome back to Newsline with Lachlan Williams and Isabella Stashkovsky. Now to see what's going on elsewhere in the world with Emily Collin.
The US is on high alert after a series of terrorist-related attacks unfolded over the weekend. Minutes before a twin bomb attack in New York on Saturday evening, a police officer killed a man after he stabbed 9 people in a shopping mall in Minnesota. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, a charity race was cancelled after a pipe bomb exploded near the course. The only fatality from the weekend's attacks was the Minnesota attacker. A war of words has erupted between Russia and the United States after a misdirected airstrike in Syria. As many as 90 Syrian soldiers who had been fighting against Islamic State forces were killed when the US-led aircraft reportedly mistook them for IS militants. Russia has criticised the United States for what it describes as deceptive and obstructive tactics. And Sound of Music fans will be sad to hear that American actress Charmaine Carr, who played the eldest Von Trapp's daughter Liesl in the film, has died aged 73. Carr died in Los Angeles after complications from a rare form of dementia. Back to you, Isabella.
With the prevalence of mental health conditions increasing in Australia, we are seeing the rise of e-counselling services. Tara Miller reports on the concerns that arise with these online health services.
It's a statistic to alarm all Australians. 1 in 4 young people currently live with a mental health condition. A recent NPS Medicine Wise study found 59% of people look up health conditions on the internet to avoid seeing a professional. In the past few years, Australian academic research organisations have been focusing on developing online counselling facilities. These have already proven to be effective. Professor Anthony Jorm of the Melbourne School of Population and Global Health says despite its popularity, e-counselling has its disadvantages and is not suited for everybody.
The e-therapies have advantages. They're very cheap to run. There's no waiting time. You can get in immediately. They have less stigma involved because you don't have to tell anybody about your problems. But we also know that in any sort of psychological therapy, talking to a warm and caring human being is part of the therapy, and you don't get that through an automated program.
Experts assure e-counselling is just as safe and confidential as other forms of therapy, though the public are still divided.
I would seek support through somebody in person.
I generally prefer talking to someone face to face. Online interaction doesn't always make me feel particularly comfortable, especially if you're talking about this sort of stuff.
I think the human touch is very necessary in those situations when you need support, and I don't feel like online it's as easy to communicate properly.
Tara Miller, Newsline.
Runners took to the track last weekend to battle brain cancer in memory of the late Connor Dawes. The annual event raises funds for research and development to tackle one of youth's biggest killers. Alice Reid reports.
This time 5 years ago, 17-year-old Robert Connor Dawes was just here. Eager to make Brighton Grammar's first date rowing crew, he had begun his season's training early. That morning he ran 18.8 kilometres, the distance from his house in Sandringham all the way to the Yarra boat sheds. But as his heart rate increased, so did the tumour in his brain. That 18.8 kilometres was coincidentally his life's length, when after being diagnosed with an anaplastic ependymoma, despite remaining as determined and positive as ever, Connor lost his battle.
I know I had a fair bit to do with him when I was just out of school, but I know he was such a great guy, and just to have this event still running so strongly after a few years, it grows year on year. So having 1,000 people join every year on is just so impressive.
The distance Connor ran that day is the same that participants of Connor's Run ran this morning from St Kilda and Sandringham. The event, which hosts participants of all ages and backgrounds and has already reached its fundraising goal of over $500,000, is a reminder of the eternal strength of Connor's spirit.
He was an incredible person. On top of that, it's a really good cause.
Connor's Run means to me a lot of fun with good friends, remembering Connor in a good way.
Today, brain cancer is still the most fatal of all childhood cancers, with 80% of children diagnosed with a high-grade tumour losing their battle within 5 years. Connor's Run is all about changing those odds. Alice Reid, Newsline.
The Camberwell Sunday Market attracts both locals as well as tourists who flock to the car park bazaar. Selling items from clothing to collectible china and antiques, the Sunday Market is celebrating its 40th birthday this year. Eleanor Beadsall has the story.
Camberwell Sunday Market attracts both locals as well as tourists who flock to the car park bazaar, selling items from clothing to china and antiques. The Camberwell Sunday Market is celebrating its 40th birthday this year.
Personally, I had some really good bargains and treasures that I found here. Plus, it's the whole atmosphere and it's the whole experience.
It's a great way to wake up on a Sunday morning. We call it the Church of Camberwell.
In more recent years, there has been a larger amount of students with stalls, and it isn't hard to see the draw. Selling old clothing and unwanted items is an easy way to make fast money.
It's unique, good prices a lot of the time.
I mostly buy second-hand clothes. I rarely buy brand new just because it's more affordable and can find just as good things.
We've noticed over the last five years, it's the audience is younger because they're coming for those vintage clothing.
The Camberwell Sunday Market is a goldmine for the Rotary Club and is the largest source of funding for the Rotary Club in Australia. Having raised more than $15 million in its 40-year existence, the money has gone towards training hospital workers, funding for secondary schools, emergency relief and other community initiatives, which will hopefully continue for another 40 years. Eleanor Beadsall, Newsline.
A Fitzroy Youth Program is offering young people aged 10 to 18 a safe and informal space to express themselves and creatively engage with the world around them. Evan Young has the story.
Inside an unassuming brick Fitzroy building, an after-school program is helping disadvantaged kids see a place for themselves within the community. Through a focus on music, technology and visual art, members are encouraged to communicate, problem solve and explore notions of self-identity.
Young people living in the area of Fitzroy and Collingwood are able to come here for free after school and pick up different skills, pick up music skills. They can also learn new technologies, how to make clothes, sewing, cooking, DJing, lots of stuff.
The clubhouse acts as a bridge between the lives of underprivileged youth and the changing community in which they live. Though the focus is on the kids, they're not the only ones getting something out of it.
Looking to study next year, go into community services and youth work. It's sort of just given me like a inside view of what it's kind of like to work with kids and also to work in these kind of environments.
Last year, some program participants performed to great fanfare at a local block party. A musical outlet is helping some of these camera-shy kids, many of whom live in these nearby commission flats, to flourish into confident performers.
Yeah, it was a big success for us because I think they built a lot of confidence, realising that, there's more to making music than just sitting in a studio. Like, you can take it out there into the real world.
The clubhouse relies on volunteers and donations to keep the program running. If you or someone you know might be keen to help out, the clubhouse is always looking for new mentors. Evan Young, Newsline.
We'll be right back after this short break. You're watching Newsline. I think I just did the most fakest smile in the world.
Doing
Okay.
alright so far?
Pardon?
We're doing alright so far?
Yeah, it looks really good. Yeah. It's looking good. I love Bazaar, you got it right. It's good.
I was faking it. Such a shit word to use.
Like 2 minutes, guys.
Sounds good.
This is going really, really well.
So what's the bit now? Thanks for joining us. Then do we have a package?
Can they just scroll a little? Can you get them just to scroll a little bit? Just to scroll a little bit, see what we've got coming up.
Can we get auto cue to scroll down a little bit? Up or down?
Just a little bit more down, a little bit more.
A little bit further down, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
Okay, thank
No,
you so
we're
much.
doing.
Yeah, I think so. Of course. Do you mind just counting to 10 for me? Oh, sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
Yeah, it's all good.
10, 11, no, keep going. 12, 13, 14, 15.
Melbourne will host Australia's biggest Banksy exhibition next month, featuring 80 works from the elusive artist. The Art of Banksy opens October 7th at Federation Square and runs into 2017. It's good news for street art fans who've seen Banksy originals disappear across the city since his 2003 visit. In July this year, 3 works were destroyed during construction in this alleyway and 2 more in 2014. But like all street art, it won't last long. The works will be returned to private collectors after the exhibition. Alana Beats, Newsline.
1 minute till we're back on. It's just a shot of you. What shots are they doing with Nathan?
After Nathan.
After Nathan. Yep. Yep.
Wasn't your colour? No, you were always green.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Fantastic.
package,
Productivity.
productivity.
So we're taking 2? All right,
Productivity.
Productivity.
No, isn't 2 on Monica? Yeah. So it's got to be 3.
Titty.
All right, 30 seconds,
Activity.
guys. So what we're doing is we're coming back on 3, and so you're going to be looking to 3 saying thanks
Me.
for that. Yeah. No. I'm talking about after Nathan.
Yeah.
You thank him from 3, and all of you will be in the shot, and then we'll throw to Monica, and Monica, you'll talk to 2. Straight away, yeah, no banter. 15, 12, 11, got the credits though. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rolling titles.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline with Lachlan Williams and Isabella Stashkovsky.
Earlier this month, the Productivity Commission released the National Education Evidence-Based Draft Report. Nathan Brown will be speaking with Dr. Peter Goss, from the School of Education and the Program Director at the Grattan Institute, to discuss these findings.
Thanks for joining us, Pete. What can we take from the Productivity Commissioner's report?
The Productivity Commission is talking about how do we need to use evidence in education to improve learning for all of our students, and that's a deeply important and a big topic. What we heard about the Productivity Commission report is a statement they made for background as a part of context that Australian school education funding has increased by $10 billion over a decade in real terms, but we have not actually seen an increase in results, and that's a challenge. So we needed to try and understand that some more.
So where exactly is that funding going?
So first of all, you need to adjust because prices go up over a decade, and that's where you get the first $10 billion figure. Then I break that into a number of chunks. First of all, the number of students in the system increased by 9%, and that accounted for about $4 billion, or about 2/5. Next, wages went up, teacher wages went up in line very much with the rest of the economy. There goes another $2 billion or another fifth. Third, the Building the Education revolution that Gillard brought in invested a lot in buildings, and though that causes ongoing costs, there's another fifth. What we're left with is about $2 billion that is hard to account for. But when we say we've spent more money, I reckon we spent about $2 billion extra over a decade out of a $50 billion spend, and we need to understand why we didn't see better results from that.
So of that $2 billion, how could we get better results if we didn't see an improvement with that?
Well, it's hard to do that now because we can't replay the tape, but let's lay out some principles. If we're going to get better results for all of our students, which is certainly what I and many others are fighting for, firstly, we need to make sure that the money flows to the schools that need it most. Secondly, that we get the most bang for the buck from every dollar, and that involves using the evidence about what works best in the classroom and giving more power to the experts who are the very best of best teachers.
So how does that work in practice? How do we get the funding where it needs to be?
The Education Act, which is a piece of federal legislation, defines how much each school should be getting according to the need of their students, whether the school is small or remote, etc. Challenge is some schools get more, some less, some below. What we need to do is try and bring all schools onto that level.
We're out of time. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Pete Goss.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan and Peter. Over to Monica with sport.
Footy fever is taking over Melbourne with Geelong to take on Sydney Swans at the MCG in the first of the preliminary finals this weekend. The tickets went on sale this morning, with members of the competing clubs hoping to see their teams win their spot in the grand final. Swans speedster Gary Rohan and co-captain Jared McVeigh left the field with injuries during their semi-final win over Adelaide. Coach John Longmire says it's too early to rule them out for Friday night's match. The AFL has revealed the logo for the National Women's League, which will begin next year. The logo features a goal square and goalposts forming the shape of a W. The closing ceremony of the Rio Paralympic Games took place this morning, with war veteran Curtis McGrath carrying the flag for Australia. Australia finished fifth on the overall medal tally with 22 gold medals and 25 Paralympic records. And Australian racing driver Daniel Ricciardo finished in second place at the Singapore Grand Prix behind Nico Rosberg of Germany. He now sits in third place in the overall Formula One standings. And that's all for sport.
Thanks, Monica. Looks like we're in for a big week of sport ahead. Now we're out to Abby Dawson, who's on location with today's weather.
Thanks guys, I'm standing outside State Library. Today it's been sunny with patches of cloud and a top of 16. Tomorrow we can expect to see a clear morning, showers developing through the afternoon and a top of 18. Wednesday, 14, rain in the morning, clearing throughout the afternoon. Thursday we can expect to see showers and a top of 15. That's the 4-day forecast. Back to you.
Thanks, Abby. We'll be sure to make the most of the beautiful day outside. Thank you for joining us this week for another episode of Newsline. We'll be back again next Monday at the same time, so make sure you tune in.